You don't think political leaders are getting worse? I mean, that's probably my point.
Not really. I mean, nobody mentioned during the Clinton scandal, during the Monica Lewinsky scandal, that was it Warren Harding had sex in the Oval Office. He did. And Andrew Jackson was a dreadful man. So I think it seems constant.
You're on the record as saying you have a big problem with the way hypertext in practice has turned out. Do you think mistakes were made earlier? Do you have a problem with writing in text at all? I mean, I'm not entirely joking. You started talking about language and scripts and so on, and there seemed to be a lot more you could have gone on to say. I was curious where you were going with that. Do you think that clearly there's a linear nature to script on a tablet or a page? Did we make a mistake a lot earlier than Xerox PARC?
The media we write on tend to be linear, although they can be laid out with, like a newspaper or with little windows and so on. But I see that as trying to break away from linearity. And so that we've always tried to break away from linearity. And they didn't in the computer field. But that's intrinsic to the nature of writing, which is not about sequence, although it's required to be about sequence when you write on paper, but it's not about sequence in the truer sense. If I could write in the air and have things connected by string, I would.
Is there any chance of a non-linear version of this lecture being available?
Watch my space.
I think to set that as a project, actually. I was thinking about it, got it on tape.
You can search for student.
Matthew.
You say you have a problem with sequence, particularly in the teaching of mathematics, yet theorems in mathematics are intrinsically sequence. Is that a contradiction?
Are all theorems sequential? Or are you saying that they're expressed sequentially?
They're expressed sequentially.
Okay, I don't know. As far as theorems, I don't know. But then most mathematics taught to at the lower levels, which I'm talking about, doesn't involve theorems. It's rather practical. But obviously locally, a theorem can be sequential and yet not spoil the notion of a lattice of learnability.
With the ideas for teaching and kids being able to pick whatever they want to learn, isn't this going to put costs up beyond a maintainable amount?
Let's put it this way. I think it should cost less. But
you'll be running teachers ragged?
Does that matter?
well, what is no. The point is that why do you need teachers? If you have, if instead you give the kids resources to pay private enterprise people. Okay, I can teach you this thing for only $5 Monopoly dollars. Then I think you'll save money because it uses economic incentive and pricing.
You'll end up with a Wikipedia level of education. That's the thing that worries me.
Is that necessarily bad?
I've got Lily in there.
Later.
This is one step back from the Wikipedia level of learning, but I have to take issue with you very, very tentatively on the idea that the magpie theory of learning is the best.
What theory?
The magpie theory? Sorry, it's what I've scribbled
Never
down.
heard of it.
There's all this stuff around and you take it in no particular order. Your crusade against non-linearity, which I find very appealing. But my impression of 25 years of teaching is that there's a huge difference between absorbing learning and producing learning, and that most people need structure to fully absorb learning. What you would create, I think, is a society that would generate more geniuses. You'd have 10% more geniuses and 90% of people who never learn anything. Is that a good result?
Well, as I said, testing is a part of my scheme. So, and also, if people wish to learn in a conventional classroom, it should be an option. But Magpie doesn't quite say what I have in mind, because Magpie suggests that things are just lying around without any guidance, whereas they should be saying, read me, and full of graphics and things like that.
Well, magpies are attracted to shiny things.
Hmm.
That's part of the magic.
Somebody wandering around polishing things.
Oh, there's a hand up. There, yeah.
My point was kind of similar, but I think that you'd end up with a very small proportion of children who'd actually want to learn, and then you get the rest who are, oh well, if I can research the things I'd like, they'd research the same things over and over again and not learn anything, but they would not take an immediate...
I'm sorry, I can't hear word.
I think, I was going to make a similar point, but I think that you'd end up with a very small amount of children who'd actually want to learn, and then you get the rest who just, if they don't immediately take the subject, and if they can't immediately just get what they want to do, they stop trying in that particular area. And so you'd end up with lots of children who totally ignore things like maths, and then studied really hard on one thing.
But what I said was, we don't abolish requirements. We only let down the required path.
But I think that if people are young, they might need a bit more directing on how to go around those instructions.
We'll just have to try it.
So unlike what the hands up.